Wow, after 15 years in the Air Force, I have to stop and think, how did I get here, and what shaped my decision to join in the first place? I would like to give some insight into why I joined and how my family has played a role in me staying in this long. Let me begin by first explaining what drove me to walk into a recruiting office and volunteer. I was a very good athlete in high school, as well as a band nerd. I played the tuba and was pretty good. Upon graduation, I was offered several partial scholarships for track and band, but I received a full ride scholarship to the New Mexico Military Institute in Roswell, New Mexico. The school is an Army ROTC, so upon graduation I would have received a commission in the United States Army. The summer after high school, I was shipped off to Fort Knox, Kentucky to begin basic training, ROTC basic training, before attending school in the fall. Well, 3 weeks into 8 weeks of training, I blew my knee out. That meant no more scholarship. I was told I could come back in a year and still receive a full ride, but at that point I knew I wasn't going back to live with my parents. And with the busted knee, those track scholarships were gone as well. So I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I had extended family. My plan was to work my way through the University of New Mexico, but first I had to get a job. I worked first at a women's clothing store. The name of the store was the $7 store, so you can only imagine the traffic that came through that place. After about 6 months, I quit to go work with my uncle in yet another dead-end job. He was a manager at an adult video store. Let's just say I made more money there in 6 months than 2 years in the Air Force. But the money wasn't worth the trouble. By this time I knew I had to get out of the state of New Mexico. I wasn't going to school as I planned, and I knew I was headed for trouble. So one day I was driving along and saw the Navy recruiting sign. I stopped in just to see. Well, the Navy recruiting office was closed, but there was an Air Force recruiting office next door. I thought I would go in and see what they were offering. Within a few hours I was sold. I just wanted the recruiter to get me out of the state within 2 weeks, which he did. Now that I've cemented my decision to join the Air Force, I only wanted to stay in for 4 years to better myself, but after 15 years I am still wearing the uniform. This is where my family comes in. My wife was my high school sweetheart, but she always had big plans. She went to summer school right out of high school, so I knew she wasn't going to stick around with me if I didn't have a plan. She was studying to become a civil engineer. So a few days after I graduated from tech school, I asked her to marry me. A year after I joined the Air Force, our first daughter was born. My wife was still in school. She forgot to tell me that an engineering degree takes more than a couple of years. Before I knew it, my first enlistment was up and my wife was still in school. So I decided to re-enlist for another 4 years. I was stationed in San Antonio and decided to stay there as long as I could. For those that are familiar with San Antonio, the Air Force has several bases there. So I hopped around between them for 10 years. I did a short tour in between just to guarantee that I would come right back to the same location. I took a bonus to re-enlist again, so now I have become a career airman. My wife finished school and started working for the city. We have a son, age 9, and a daughter, age 8. We were happy living in San Antonio, but as a military family, we could not stay put forever. We decided to put in for an overseas assignment. Within 2 months of my request, we were given orders to PCS to Norway. Once we got here, my kids instantly became military brats. They fit in with all the other kids that had moved every 2 to 4 years. I knew then I was in the Air Force for the long haul. I'll leave you with this brief insight into how I made the decision to join the Air Force and how my family played a role in me staying in this long. After the last 15 years, I think I can do the last 5 standing on my head.